Good morning. It's good to actually hear voices in my ears when I say good morning. Welcome to our community Church Unitarian Universalist. I am your worship associate, Alicia, and it is a joy to be with you in person and virtually today. So who are we as Community Church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. Please look to your weekly email for announcements. And now that some of us are able to be back in the church, we are continuing to broadcast services online. We are so thankful to the members who have made it possible for us to have virtual services during the pandemic, and we could use some more help on the tech side of worship so that we can continue streaming our worship services. So if you might be interested, please let me know. And again, as a reminder, if you are joining us online, you are welcome to join us in person every Sunday as well, provided you have your COVID vaccination proof or a recent negative test. I'm going to bring up Elizabeth for a quick announcement.
I don't know if I met everybody, but I'm the new Community Justice Chair. We have begun working with Together NOLA, which is a group that has a lot of different organizations working together to try to make New Orleans better. And right now, the big thing that they're working on is Entergy, which I'm sure is something we can all agree needs some work. And the first big thing that we're doing is we have a Civic Academy, which is something to just help voters understand what's going on and just the power that we have, because we're in a unique situation here in which our city council has power over Entergy. They control the utility company, and so if you're interested in learning more about that and attending that, that's on Monday, October the 18th at 6:30 p.m. at Temple Sinai. And if you would like to attend and you want more information, you can register at togethernola.org, or you can come talk to me after service and I can let you know more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So today we are delighted to welcome Stacey Mitchell to our pulpit for the first time. Stacey is a candidate for ministry with Unitarian Universalism, recently completing her Master of Divinity from Union Theological Seminary. Stacey also just completed her UU Parish internship with First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon, and just began a chaplain residency position with University Medical Center in New Orleans. Stacey's career before engaging in Unitarian Universalism ministry has included working for the International Peace Organization, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, serving as head of finance for a well-known Buddhist monastery in Canada, working for the environmental group the Sierra Club, and volunteering as board chair for Centro Mujeres USA, a women's rights organization in Mexico and the United States, as well as a member of UN Women. Stacey has been a practicing Buddhist for 15 years. She's inspired by nature, including the animal kingdom, gardens, wilderness, beaches, and is now excited to explore the great place this area of Louisiana has to offer. So we welcome her. Let us prepare for worship with our chalice lighting. It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice, invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join in singing, "We Light This Flame." CCUU's Religious Education Director, Cynthia Ramirez, brings us her words for all ages.
Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. For Nana. This is a boy named Julian, and this is his abuela, and those are some mermaids. Julian loves mermaids. Vámonos, mijo. This is our stop. Abuela, did you see the mermaids? I saw them, mijo. Abuela, I am also a mermaid. I'm going to take a bath. You'll be good. Come here, mijo. For me, abuela? For you, Julian. Where are we going? You'll see, says abuela. Mermaids, whispers Julian. Let's join them. And they do.
Greater than the storm.
Our first reading is A Lifelong Sharing from Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing. A lifelong sharing of love with others. Community Church is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends' generosity help us to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccuunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659. Text the word give. You can also send a check to us at 6690 Fleur-de-Lis Drive, New Orleans, 70124. And if you are with us today, you can give in person. You may come forward during the musical offertory. And if you are unable to come forward, raise your hand and we will come to you. Thank you.
A fierce unrest sees at the door of all against the winds. It was the eager wishing soul that gave the gods their wings. Their throats to all the world adore this heartbeat God and stolen. Shaken systems star by star awaken. But for the urge of this unrest, these joyous souls are mute. But for the rebel in our midst, that we remain as mutes. Then baffled lips demand their speech trembled into birth. One day the lyric word shall reach from earth to land like birth. From day to dream, from dream to day, from daring to daring. The restless wish, the instant wind till drove us up the snow. Sing, we know battle firmament, gold ordered regular. We sing the swinging discontent that leaps from star to star.
So now is the sacred time of joys and sorrows, and we have several options here. If you are online, please write your joys and sorrows in the chat box to be read out loud. If you are in person, there are cards of joys and sorrows coming forward. You may write your joys and sorrows if you wish for them to be read out loud. You will also be able to come up and speak them into the mic if you so choose after our musical interlude. And we thank you.
The heaven forget the day when my dear mother did sweetly say, trusting her for saving grace. And you're learning she'll make it right. She sure will guide you all in the right. When I think of my mother dear, how often she did and tried to cheer my wandering mind must not stray. The same sun and slept away.
All right, a joy from Sally. My joy is that the strange color of last week's video has departed. The ghost in the machine has been exorcised. We are grateful. From Heidi, my little dog Panda has a very sick right eye. His blood vessels popped from an eye ulcer. He will be on meds for the next 2 months. So that is a sorrow. Please keep Panda in your thoughts. Alan Malone tells us on October 15th, I'll be celebrating the 61st anniversary of my first parachute jump. So, I assume you will celebrate that by jumping out of a plane, another parachute. Okay. And then 2 joys from Kathy. It is a joy to have former CCUU member Kathy Marks-Kaki visit with us today while she is in town. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, but it's good to have you. And again, from Kathy Larimer, it is a great joy to have a new banner for CCUU made for us by Heidi Netherton. We will reveal it right after the service. Is there anyone else at this time who would like to come up and speak a joy or a sorrow into the microphone?
On Tuesday, October 12th, 9:30 a.m., Captain Kirk will be going into space. After 55 years of absence, and Khan, his nemesis, says, "Ah, Kirk, my old friend."
Truly joyous. John Paget writes, I have a joy that our child Mamie has got their first vaccine shot. So maybe soon our church will be filled with children again as well. And we will light 2 more candles, one for the joys still bubbling up, too new to share, and one for the sorrows that we cannot yet put into words. Know that we love you, and we hold you in our hearts. Our second reading today is Benediction by Rebecca Ann Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reach of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, and waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will. a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice, anesthetization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting that that which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and for this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of the struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, its course of life, welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be with you this morning, and grateful to be here. So I remember the first time I saw a shanty town. I was visiting a friend who's founder of a nonprofit in Mexico called Centro Mujeres, Spanish for Women's Center, a member and also a member of UN Women. We were at the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula of Mexico. Cabo San Lucas is known as a tourist destination, particularly for those living on the West Coast who travel down to Mexico. And my friend, Teresa, helps very poor women with employment training, health access, and hygiene education. She would go out to the poorest neighborhoods in the region to connect with women who were limited in their ability to travel. She warned me ahead of time that I may see a level of destitute poverty I had not experienced before this. We drove south on the highway towards the tourist city of Cabo San Lucas from the southern Baja capital of La Paz. Many tourists fly into San Jose del Cabo, just north of Cabo San Lucas, where many of the locals live. At some point, as you get to the city area, there are very large walls to help blind the driver in seeing the destitute poverty that would otherwise be seen, the shanty towns. We drove up the hill for a bit and crossed the ridge, going down the backside, where I saw endless rows of homes. These homes were made of cardboard. The really poor folks had smaller ones at the base of the hill. The larger ones toward the top of the hill may have had up to 250 square feet. A block might share an outhouse, and kitchen stoves might be located outside. A shanty town is described as a settlement of improvised buildings known as shanties or shacks, typically made of materials such as mud, aluminum, and wood. A typical shanty town lacks adequate infrastructure, including proper sanitation, safe water supply, electricity, and street drainage. We see shanty towns almost anywhere around the world, and we may think of Mumbai, Rio de Janeiro, Haiti, Mexico, among many other cities and countries. In the United States, we see shanty towns, or our versions of them, tents as well as rusted and parked vehicles on the streets. Many are temporary as people are forced to leave in areas or sidewalks and public spaces. Some are more permanent in discrete areas, some with cardboard and aluminum walls and ceilings. In my own contemplations, I wonder, what are the moral and spiritual ramifications for this state of inequality? How does this happen when not only do we have shanty towns in Mumbai, but also in one of the wealthiest countries in the world? I often think of what author Raul Martinez describes as the lottery of birth. Why was I born in the United States and not South Sudan? War-torn Syria, Bangladesh, among other countries who were at war and or food insecure. And what, if any, is my responsibility to others where I reside in a country that has relative privilege, often at the cost of others? Not to mention, we reside in a country where Native Americans have been subject to genocide in a country built on the back of slave laborers. Actress and United Nations envoy Angelina Jolie has said, "I never understood why some people are lucky enough to be born with the chance that I had, to have this path in life, and why across the world there is a woman just like me, with the same abilities and the same desires, same work ethic and love of her family, who would most likely make better films and better speeches. Only she sits in a refugee camp, and she has no voice." We live in a world of extremes, shanty towns to multi-million-dollar mansions, $500 meals in Manhattan and London to soup kitchens across the nation, and aerial food drops from planes in impoverished, war-torn areas of the world. This is one reason why I have appreciated the United Nations. The United Nations addresses the inequalities that include hunger, violence, war, women's equality, and more recently, LGBTQI rights. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights states, "The General Assembly proclaims this universal declaration of human rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society keeping this declaration constantly in mind shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures, national and international." The United Nations is an alternative to nationalism, an alternative to self-interest, an alternative to inequality. It is not perfect, as no institution is, but there is a hope of a better future, a better way of engaging cross-culturally, cross-politically, a way to collectively save our Earth, whereas with individual nations, it becomes a less effective piecemeal approach. In regards to the human rights of the topic of hunger, almost 1 billion people worldwide experience food insecurity of the 7.8 billion in the world. 113 million people have acute hunger, suffering from starvation, leading to over 7 million deaths, 7 million people dying of hunger worldwide in 2020. 7 million more have already died this year. The United Nations World Food Program is the largest institution in the world addressing hunger. After years of seeing a decline in world hunger in 2018 and 2019, there was an uptick, and that is before the devastation of COVID hit the world. The organization Oxfam announced this year that hunger deaths have outpaced COVID deaths this last year worldwide. As we continue to suffer the devastation of COVID in our country, we can see where COVID has wreaked havoc on our most vulnerable throughout the world as well. Our own United States food banks and soup kitchen lines have increased in demand by 5 times in many areas of our country since the pandemic hit. There are too many families with no safety net to living on the streets. And then there is our faith. Did you know that the Unitarian Universalists have had a United Nations office for almost 60 years? The United Nations was founded in 1945, and the Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA, has been involved in the work of the United Nations since 1962. Unitarian and United Nations Ambassador Adlai Stevenson, appointed by John F. Kennedy, wrote to UUA President Dana Greenlee stating, "In this disastrous and shrinking world, it is no longer possible, if it ever was, for local communities to be more secure than the surrounding world. Our ultimate security, therefore, lies in making the world more and more into a community." As Unitarian Universalists, how do these issues relate also to our theology? Our 6th principle states the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Our ideals include not just equality and justice for all, but we see that and acknowledge our 7th principle with the interconnectedness of life. But our principles don't have any suggested definitive answer that has a science of why we were born in one place over another. In the United States, most of us are born of varying degrees of privilege, so we often have the privilege of not having to ponder this. To know where Unitarian Universalists have engaged with United Nations work, current Executive Director Bruce Knotts of the Unitarian Universalist United Nations Office, known as the UUNO, has said, the 3 areas where we've made a difference are building religions for peace in the 1960s, leading the faith-based caucus to establish the International Court, and recently really changing the culture of the United Nations to be proactive in endorsing LGBTI human rights, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex. Consulting bodies such as the UUNO or Centro Mujeres provide testimony, consultation, and witness to United Nations entities such as the Human Rights Commission or the Office of United Nations Women. At the United Nations, one day, about 3 years ago, at an interfaith event, I listened to the testimony of an LGBTI advocate, Yvette Abrams, who is Christian and from Africa. She described what she called the genocide of LGBTI people in Africa and around the world, those who live in countries where it is illegal to be identified as LGBTI, and therefore systematically harmed, including execution. She shared stories of hangings or, in best-case scenarios, efforts to convert to heterosexual norms. Yvette also shared stories of what she had heard in Malawi, where babies who are born with both sexual organs are killed at birth because these babies are perceived of bringing bad luck to family and communities. Intersex humans are estimated to be almost 2% of our world population. As a Christian, she asked the audience convened that day, how can we be in the presence of God in the midst of a genocide? If God is omniscient, what is said about genocide, hunger, starvation, disease, war, homophobia, racism, sexism, and so on? So we can also extend Yvette's question about hunger and violence. As Unitarian Universalists, we have different opinions about the concept of God, but our theology does not have any history of believing in a damning God. Genocide is not an evil act happening on another side of a border somewhere done by God, but done by humans. Universalist theology would say God is found in humans by manifesting love. At that United Nations meeting, Amania Brown from Samoa, who is Catholic and co-chair of the Global Interfaith Network for people of all sexes, sexual orientations, gender identities, and expressions, gave a list of examples where people in Morocco, Iran, Turkey, among other countries, have been persecuted by governments or individuals who have either been identified as LGBTI or just being suspected of being an LGBTI person. There are places on earth where it is a crime simply to be alive. Accountability structures based on shared values of equality and justice for all must be in place. For certain countries where freedom is not accessible to all, the United Nations is one of the only political structures in existence that attempts to demand that safety for all. If we can see God as love, then maybe we can begin to comprehend more of what Dr. Abrams said at the beginning of the testimonies, that maybe we can begin to find God's love in the midst of a genocide. It is not God doing something to us. In the spirit of universalism, our heritage as a spiritual people teaches us that God is a loving God. Unitarian Universalist theology has evolved this theology in that God is love, not a deity involved in the mundane acts of admonishing or praising. In Universalist theology, God is beyond this. God interconnects us all in love. If we live out this theology, we don't believe God is engaged in genocide, but it is humans who either engage in violence or humans who choose to look the other way. And where we forget that our Unitarian Universalist view, that we forget that in our Unitarian Universalist view, that God is love, a verb, not a noun. With our ideals of equality and justice for all and the acknowledgement of interconnectedness, we have our principles that guide our actions. How do we live out our theological beliefs 24/7? If we don't even see our own contradictory actions, how can we address them? I see my garbage bag fills up every week to be put in a landfill, yet I support the idea of a circular economy. I advocate for protecting rainforests and cultures relying on the natural world, but I buy products, paper, metal, plywood, that is part of my home without considering where that wood or an appliance in my home came from. I think this is one reason why anti-racist work within ourselves is being so focused on in recent years, particularly in our denomination. Hardly anyone admits to being racist, yet racism is on full display in this country. So I continue to reflect where my actions are contradictory within my own spiritual views. We engage in activism, we engage in policy making, we support laws of equality. But I believe we are here on a Sunday morning together to engage in more. We are a congregation involved in the spiritual life, however each of us chooses to define that term, as we build beloved community together. And we can't wait to be saved from the external world. Or maybe we can try, but I don't think that's a Unitarian Universalist spiritual approach to a situation. We have data, we have statistics, we have analysis, we have assessments, studies, proposals, agendas. And yet, we are getting closer and closer every month to more destructive hunger, destructive human death, and more species that go extinct. But we can connect with our hearts to engage love and transform any area that we care about. It is love of our earth and each other that transforms the world. We know from our own experience in simply being a human that love transforms what thinking may not. When we love a child, they are nurtured. When we love a pet, we care for them. When we lovingly tend a garden, it grows. When we lovingly connect without judgment, space is there for something transformative to arise. Unconditional love does not have an agenda. Love is faith that beauty can arise. Love is faith that change is possible. Love is faith that love is enough for the sake of love. Love is faith that we can transform what is hurt and suffering to a more connected and healing community. Love is faith that we can help each other and earth. Love is building beloved community with our hearts and our hands. So we can love the orphan in Sudan. We can love the homeless in our neighborhoods. We can love the rivers that run nearby. Love the birds perched on our trees. Love your family. Love your neighbors. Love Breonna Taylor. Love yourself as a source of where your love spreads. And then just don't ever stop. May it be so, and amen. So as we leave this morning together, I'm reminded by the words of Mother Teresa in our hearts that each one of us has a mission to fulfill, a mission of love. Let us remember as much as possible to love where love is needed, to love because that is what heals our individual and collective souls. Let us love as that is what bonds us in beloved community always. And many blessings to all of you. Thank you.
Love.